Hello and welcome to the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit Dubai. Thank you for joining us. We're pleased to introduce you to Niall Statham, member of the senior leadership team and head of PE, and Mary Rose Grieve, school librarian at Hartland International School in Dubai. We hope that you enjoy the session, and over to you, Niall and Mary Rose.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are in the world. Our session today is on technology and a framework of skills for inquiry. So we're going to start off with some introductions. So first of all, as Danny mentioned, my name is Niall Statham. I'm head of PE at Hartland International School in Dubai. I've been teaching in the Middle East for 10 years now, and predominantly I'm a PE teacher by day, EdTech enthusiast by night, if you will. My background is largely in rugby. Since moving to the UAE, I was captain of the UAE rugby team in 7s and 15s, and since retiring from sport, I've started to develop my interest in technology more. One of my roles in the school as well as head of PE is I'm in charge of innovation. So I've been working a lot as part of the school's digital learning program, and looking at embedding, trialing, and analysing different forms of technology. And Mary Rose.
Hello, I am Mary Rose Grieve. I am the school librarian here at Hartland, in charge of primary and secondary and staff libraries. This is my 6th year at the school, and so as the school's developed, my role has developed. The libraries have got bigger and bigger, and increasingly there's obviously more and more to do. But I am passionate about developing a whole school reading culture, and also inquiry learning, digital and information literacy, hence us being here together.
Yeah, so you might be thinking, and you'd be forgiven for thinking so, that what are a PE teacher and a librarian doing on an EdTech summit speaking about framework for inquiry? But hopefully we'll be able to convince you by the end of this session in the message that we're giving you. So I'm just going to slide the camera now a little bit, and we'll move on with the session. So something that I think hopefully I won't have to convince you of is the importance of student agency, and I've referenced some articles there below, but something that I really believe in is about students being empowered in decision making that surrounds their learning, and that students have the opportunity to pursue areas of interest. And the more relevant it is to their interests, and the more meaningful the experience is for them, the more we start to develop that curiosity, which is what we really want. We want to capture those moments as often as we can in the classroom where a student starts to wonder about something on their own. And if I think back to my own experiences as a parent during home learning, some of the best discussions that I had with my daughter when I was helping her with her English work came from her own ideas, and her asking me a question and saying, but how could a beanstalk grow so fast in Jack and the Beanstalk? I said, well, that's a great question. Let's go and find out. And it led us down all sorts of wonderful paths that we might never have expected to travel down. And if I take a moment to sort of reflect personally about my own views about agency and autonomy, it's important to adults, and it's important, I think, to every professional in their career to feel that to some extent they have control over where they're going in their professional development, where they're going in their personal development, and ultimately where they're going in life. And lots of these things are interlinked. And if we take CPD as an example, and it's something that I've written about and talked about in other webinars, that many schools now recognise the importance of not having a pre-prescribed CPD model to support staff professional learning and staff needs, because it's so unlikely that we get a situation where everyone needs the same thing, and staff have to play a part in identifying their own strengths and weaknesses and areas for interest. And I don't think it's too big a step to then apply that into the classroom for students. that it's important to recognise the various interests and the different needs and curiosities that students have. And when you can foster an environment in your school staff where there's agency and development and trust exists to create, it definitely makes for a happier workforce. So what's the end game? What are we trying to foster here, or the project that Mary Rose and I are working on together? Where are we going with it? We want students to wonder as often as possible. We want to take advantage of those moments where students, almost daydreaming, if you like, are just lost in thought, going, I wonder what would happen if. We want students to be able to have the tools to go and find things out. So we don't want to lose those moments of wonder, because if they exist and students don't have the means to investigate and inquire, those moments of wonder are kind of like smoke in the air. We talk about lighting a fire of curiosity, and then very quickly that smoke can disappear if the means aren't there for students to take advantage of them. We want them to be able to reflect about what they learn, what they find out, and we want it to ultimately improve and influence their learning. And this is where we get to the technology part. So perhaps a little bit of a false dawn is the personal devices in classrooms. And this is by no means me saying that I'm not in favour of a bring your own device in school. But I think the personal devices, if used incorrectly, can sometimes take inquiry back several steps. And if we think of, that a world of information and a world of answers at our fingertips, but the stat there below is one that just prior to this presentation, I typed a quick search into Google, and it was about something somewhat subjective. It was, what were the causes what were the events that led up to the First World War? And you could see how many different results I got there in under 1 second. So suddenly being able to find that information, finding information is easy. Knowing which information to look at is not so easy. And I think this is where inquiry has sometimes taken a bit of a bashing from different parts of education, because it's very difficult to be able to get students to work in the way that you want them to with that much information. And it's important, I think, here to make the distinction about the difference between searching and researching. And I think where we ask students to find things out, we devolve sometimes down to the lowest easiest form of inquiry, which is typing it into a search engine. But there's a huge difference between searching and researching, which is something that we'll touch on later. And if we consider the SAMR model in this, and we think about our use of technology when it comes to inquiry and when it comes to research skills, so often it falls into the substitution or the augmentation. So sometimes augmentation exists where using devices and technology in classroom gives some functional improvement, because it gives you speed, agility and mobility, because you can search for information quickly. It's a faster process than going to find out from speaking to someone, perhaps, or from going to a library to go into a library catalogue and to search for a book. But sometimes that's all it is, and sometimes it's at its lowest, it's not even substitution, because it doesn't act as a direct substitute for having confirmed accurate information. It has just volume of information. When really what we want to get to the point is where to the redefinition point, where technology allows for the creation of new tasks that were previously inconceivable. So some of the challenges, for sure, students around the world are experiencing digital fatigue, and probably the more wide-ranging their online learning experience, the more they might be suffering from digital fatigue. that's not just an uncorroborated statement. We did some student voice surveys with our students, and we were all excited about the use of technology going forward when we came back into class. And when we surveyed the students, they said, actually, sir, we'd like to not use it quite as much or all the time if that would be okay with the teachers. So that's definitely an issue. And perhaps the biggest challenge, or perhaps sitting alongside safety online, is the challenge of navigating fake news. And it will become perhaps particularly prevalent, or even more so, in the current climate that we're living in. Take vaccines, for example, with the possibility of COVID vaccine coming online in the future, and how that information is going to be handled online. And it sort of, we'll come on to that further, but there's the dangers of the website as well, and fake news goes hand in hand with the ability to analyze. And if we don't, what we're going to argue is that if we don't spend time with students teaching them the skills that they need to navigate technology for inquiry, we leave them open to all these different things. We force them to make questionable decisions without guidance, without adults being there. If we can work with them on inquiry in the classroom and we can moderate what they do, we lose some of the trust issues, and we can support them with the ability to analyze. But sooner or later, we have to consider the bigger pictures, that these are skills for life that students are going to need in their further studies if they go on to, and they're going to need them as adults as well. And we need these skills right now as adults, and not all of them we have. If you want to go online and you want to find out a time for something at a cinema, if you want to watch a film, sometimes even just simple information like that can be really challenging. So we multiply that by many times, where we're asking students to look for subjective information, or we don't arm them with the skills to analyze the credibility of a website. So, in the words of Elvis Presley, we can't go wrong together with suspicious minds, which is ultimately one of the things that we want to cultivate through our framework for inquiry. And it's something that Mary Rose is going to come on to talk about next. So where we're trying to go with this is incorporating a structured framework for inquiry, which students are taught over their course of time at the school, linking that to a bespoke digital skills curriculum, which is going to teach them explicitly some of the skills that they need to be able to use technology tools more efficiently for the purposes of inquiry. And we're trying to cultivate skeptical thinkers who, when confronted with new information or information that doesn't seem right, they by nature challenge it, or look to confirm it, or respond to it with a question about how do we know, or why might that be the case. And just before we came on air, I'm hoping that I'm not going to steal this line from the Mary Rose, and she's not included it in her section, but talk often about standing on the shoulders of giants. But we want our students to be able to ask the question, well, whose shoulders am I standing on, and why am I standing on them? And are these the right shoulders for me to be standing on? So I'm going to hand over to Mary Rose now. Now, hopefully, I've convinced you that there's a challenge, and I've also hopefully convinced you that there's a need for a solution, and that this solution exists, or one possible solution to this problem exists. And Mary Rose is going to talk you through how we're proposing to handle it.
So what you see on the screen is the framework of skills for inquiry learning, which has been developed by Darryl Torian and his colleagues at Oakham School in the UK. It is one of many frameworks and curricula available that will sit underneath that help people with their research and inquiry learning. We have chosen to explore this in our workings for a number of reasons. One, for me as a librarian, it's particularly important because it involves the library explicitly in this process. And given the curriculum constraints, we teach GCSE and A-level here. And as you will know, if you do the same, there's very little room in there for this kind of research skills and inquiry learning. But we know that at school, we need to be giving our children life skills, as Niall was saying, about how to negotiate and navigate through the internet and information and digital literacy. And the role of the library in helping that happen is crucial, because we sit underneath all the learning that's happening in the classroom, and we're not constrained by the curriculum in the same way that teachers are. So we can help with this part. And obviously, as librarians, we are all about information. So we have the skills to teach research and investigation in this framework. I think, and actually the other thing that it does, which is crucial, is to help teachers and librarians work together. Historically, librarians and libraries have often been sort of left on their own to get on with their own job, doing reading for pleasure and perhaps helping with a bit of research. But this framework really helps to bring our expertise together with the teachers, which is why I like it so much, and why I think the teachers like it. So we have been slowly working out how we can bring this into the curriculum in both primary and secondary. We started with doing a very little project with the year twos on people in the past, and we help. On the website, you will see a very detailed framework. This has been adapted from Barbara Stripling's framework in the US, the Empire State Information Fluency Continuum, and but this is particularly useful for us at GCSE, A-level, and in primary, actually, because it will transcend all of them. We then did some work with year 5 on the Greeks, and created a booklet for the children to be able to frame their thought process. You start with connecting, as we always do in a classroom. What do you already know about this subject? And then I wonder, based on that, what else I want to know. And this connect, wonder, investigate cycle is very messy, and it is not as linear as it appears on the screen. So you investigate some more, then you make some more connections, and then you wonder things. And then towards the end, you can then construct it and express it into your own argument and reflect on your work. Later on, it is more difficult to embed this into the secondary school, into the GCSE and A-level curriculum. But we have discovered, as I think others have in Dubai, that one of the best ways to do this is through the social studies curriculum. So our next project will be working with our social studies lead to see how we can use this in the social studies lessons to really help the children get an understanding of how it works, which then they can transfer to their life and their skills beyond school. So any more information, I'm conscious that we don't have very much time to continue with this, but there's lots of information that you'll be able to find on the website, and do get in touch if you'd like any more. But I think it's time for me to hand back to Mr. Statham, where he will finish off our talk.
Just to speak a tiny bit more before we come to a conclusion about fossil, I think what is really useful about this framework of skills for inquiry is that this isn't just something that supports students, it's something that supports teachers as well, and is really crucial to helping teachers start to get comfortable supporting students to develop skills for inquiry. And I can think back to times when earlier on in my career where I've had an idea about something that I want students to research, or a task that I want them to go about doing in their own way, and without having this framework in place or a similar kind of structure in mind, I've set students off on a task to find something out, and they haven't really known where to start or how to go about finding the information properly. And before you know it, you can find yourself at the end of a lesson with a valuable 45 to 50 minutes gone, with the students not having found anything that helps you move forward in what you're doing. So I think using something like Fossil as a structured framework that you can teach to students over time is massively beneficial. And I think when we consider some of the challenges that we've talked about earlier, having something like this in place is a vital tool and a vital step in helping students deal with misinformation and start to ask questions about how they are going to use and interpret information. And I'm going to put Mary Rose back on the spot just one more time to just talk about how the steps that she's taking to use technology and use like things like the library catalogue and bring those into the classroom for students.
We use Follet Destiny here, and the children, one of the brilliant things that has come out of lockdown is that we have finally been able to introduce it to the children as a learning tool. It's always been a rather difficult thing to do when everybody was in school and the library was here. But as part of that system, we have a program called Collections, where you can put together all kinds of websites, documents, videos based on a subject. So for the little ones, we've been putting together websites that are very carefully curated. We know that they'll find the information on there. I think one of the crucial things is, particularly in the early stages, is for the teacher to be at the end of the process and to have kind of made a path through it that the children can follow them on. So instead of starting with go and find out about the Olympic Games, you know the answers you want them to get to, and you've found the websites for them to be able to find those answers, that they're not just randomly looking desperately trying to find the answers. You've already found them for them and you've signposted them, so they are beginning to develop and that allows them to be critical at the very beginning, and critical of the information that they're reading, without having to do too much random searching. So we use the library catalogue a lot, which I think is vital, because of course as soon as you get to university, that is the only place you're going to go and the place that you're going to use the most. So if they get into the habit of using that here, even in primary school, it just becomes second nature. So we subscribe also to Encyclopedia Britannica and various other databases, which also have curated sites of information. So we are really moving them away from using Google and Wikipedia until they're at a point where we can explain to them about the difficulties of using those sites. So it's very, very structured at the beginning, but it also with me being here, helps the teachers have the time to do those things, because actually, as we all know, in a classroom, your time is very precious, and there's very little time to get these resources together. So I've been working a lot to make these resource packs available so that part is done, which then just helps me to get into the classrooms and for me to be more helpful for the teachers and to let them get on with doing their part of their job.
Great, thank you very much, Mary Rose. So that brings us perfectly to the end of our presentation. There are contact details. As I said, my name is Niall Statham. You can find me on Twitter at Niall Statham. Mary Rose Grieve is our school librarian, and she's at HI School Library, and then our school Twitter is there as well. And we'd love to connect with you further if you've enjoyed our presentation today, or if you'd like to reach out to us to discuss or share any further ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niall and Mary Rose. That was brilliant. If you have any questions pertaining to the session, you can also connect with Niall and Mary Rose through the networking system on the virtual event platform. We'd also love to hear from you, so feel free to share any thoughts or comments by sending us an email to marketing@guesteducation.com. We'll be on social media as well during the summit, so if you want to chat to us there, follow us on Twitter @guesteducation and use the hashtags #guestedtech and #guestdubai. This is just one of many on-demand videos that you can watch at any time during the summit, as well as a full program of live keynote and panel sessions across both days. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.